Think of a couple you know. Maybe your parents, maybe your grandparents, maybe a couple that has been together so long that they finish each other's sentences, or stopped finishing them altogether. They share a house. They share a bed. They have raised children, buried parents, survived illness and financial ruin, and every ordinary crisis that life hands. To two people foolish enough to try building something together. And yet, if you watch closely enough, there is a particular silence between them. Not the comfortable silence of two people at peace. Something thinner. Something that has the texture of a conversation that was never finished and eventually never started again. They are not strangers. They are something more unsettling than strangers. They are people who used to know each other and somewhere along the way stopped. How does that happen? Not through betrayal, not through one catastrophic argument, but slowly, quietly, through a habit so small and so ordinary that most couples never even notice it until the distance is already enormous. That is what this video is about. Psychologists have a name for the force that holds long relationships together, and it is not love, or not only love. It is a concept called mutual knowledge. The sense that I know you, that I understand how you think, how you feel, what you need before you say it. In a healthy relationship, mutual knowledge is one of the most beautiful things that exists. It is the shorthand of two lives intertwined, the glance across the room, the cup of tea that appears without being asked. But mutual knowledge has a shadow side, and the shadow side is assumption. The moment we stop treating the person in front of us as someone we are still discovering, the moment we replace curiosity with conclusion, something begins to close. Not loudly. There is no single moment you can point to. It is more like the way a room slowly fills with dust when you stop opening the windows. One day, you notice the light looks different, and you realize you cannot remember the last time the air was fresh. The habit has many names in psychology. John Gottman, who has spent decades studying what makes relationships last, calls one version of it stonewalling, the act of shutting down emotionally rather than engaging with conflict. But the version I want to talk about is subtler than stonewalling. It does not announce itself. It arrives in small moments that feel entirely reasonable in the moment they happen. It sounds like this. I already know where this conversation is going. It sounds like a sigh before the sentence is finished, a redirect to the television, a polite nod that means, I am listening, but actually means, I have already decided this is not worth my full attention. It is the habit of closing the door on someone before they have finished knocking. And here's the painful truth about it. It comes almost always from a place of exhaustion rather than cruelty. These are not bad people doing bad things. These are tired people who have had the same conversation many times, who have learned, or believe they have learned, exactly how it ends. So they skip it. They protect themselves from the frustration of going around the same circle again. And in doing so, they also protect themselves from the possibility that this time, it might have been different. When I look at the couples I know who have been together for 30 years or more, and I mean the ones who have settled into this particular silence, I notice something. Very often, the disconnection runs along a specific fault line. And it is not a fault line of character. It is a fault line of education. An entire generation of men was raised with a single emotional instruction: do not show weakness. In German, there is an expression, Indianer kennt keinen Schmerz. An Indian feels no pain. It was meant to make boys strong. What it actually made was men who had no language for the inside of their own experience. You cannot share what you have never been given words for. And so, what happens in a long marriage when one person needs to talk and the other person has spent his whole life learning that talking about feelings is a sign of failure? The person who needs to talk keeps trying, keeps raising the same subjects, gets frustrated when nothing changes. The person who cannot respond does not become a villain. They become a wall. And the person talking is not talking to a wall out of stubbornness. They are talking to a wall because they remember a door being there. Eventually, many couples stop trying altogether. They arrive at what some therapists call a functional arrangement, a relationship that works in the practical sense while being emotionally empty. The bills get paid, the garden gets tended. Nobody would describe the situation as a crisis, but nobody would describe it as a life together either. When this pattern runs long enough, couples tend to find themselves at one of three places. The first is arrangement. They stay together, and they are not unhappy in any dramatic sense. They have friends, grandchildren, routines they enjoy, but they have, quietly and without ceremony, given up on the idea that this person will ever fully understand them. They have made peace with it, or something that looks like peace. The second is late separation, and this is the one that shocks everyone, because it comes after the children have grown, after the mortgage is paid, after all the reasons people told themselves to stay have dissolved. Suddenly, with nothing left holding the structure together, one or both partners realizes that the structure was the relationship, and the relationship itself had gone quiet years ago. Divorce at 70 is not a failure of commitment. It is often the final honest act in a story that stopped being honest a long time before. And the third road is the one nobody chooses consciously, but many end up on, being held together by necessity, by illness, by dependency, by the vow that was made in a different lifetime to a different version of each other. In good times and in bad. That was the promise. Nobody warned us that it could also describe the slow erosion of two people who simply forgot to keep looking at each other. Here's the thing about the slow disconnect. It begins not with an absence of love, but with an absence of curiosity. We stop asking. We stop wondering. We replace, "Who are you becoming?" with, "I know who you are." And while that certainty feels like intimacy, it is actually its opposite. True intimacy requires the ongoing willingness to be surprised. The most dangerous sentence in a long relationship is not, "I don't love you anymore." It is, "I already know what you're going to say." Because the person in front of you is not the same person you married. They have been changed by time, by loss, by quiet shifts in what they value and what they fear. The question is whether you have been paying attention, and if you have not, that is not a condemnation. It is an invitation. There is research suggesting that couples who deliberately ask each other questions they do not already know the answer to, not about logistics, but about the interior life. What do you think about now that you didn't used to? What do you want that you've never asked for? Report higher levels of connection, even in relationships that have been strained for years. It does not require therapy. It does not require a crisis. It requires only the willingness to treat the person across the breakfast table as someone you have not yet fully understood. There is a German word I find myself thinking about when I consider long relationships. Vertraut. It means both familiar and trusted. In German, familiarity and trust share the same root. I think that is not an accident, because true familiarity, not the lazy assumption of familiarity, but the real thing, is one of the deepest forms of trust that exists. It says, "I have seen you change. I have changed with you, and I am still here, still watching, still willing to be surprised. A long relationship is not a destination. It is an ongoing act of translation, learning over and over again how to speak the language of someone who is always, slowly becoming someone new. If any of this resonated today, whether you are in a relationship that has gone quiet, or you are watching one from the outside, or you are simply carrying the question of what it means to truly know another person, I hope it gave you something to bring with you. Not an answer, just a different kind of looking. If this video spoke to something you recognize in your own relationship or in someone you love, leave a comment below. I read every single one. And if you are new here, this channel is called Too Soon Old, Too Late Wise. Every video is about the things that matter most and that we somehow never got around to learning. Subscribe if that sounds like your kind of conversation. I'll see you in the next one.